We are talking to Shari Spiegel from the Financing for Development Office. Ms. Spiegel, can you explain to me how financing for development fits in today's world and what are the challenges?
Okay. So in its broadest sense, financing for development looks at how can the global financial system act in the interest of global goals and global needs and global development. At the United Nations, this is founded and based on the Monterey Consensus. The Monterey Consensus was an agreement between member states in 2002, and that provided a framework for how to finance global goals such as the Millennium Development Goals. And we need to now think about how do we update it to address the global challenges of today.
Financing for development is an increasingly sensitive subject today. As countries are reducing budgets in all areas, why is it crucial not to cut the development budgets?
Okay, that's a really important question. In fact, over the last 2 years, official development assistance from donor countries to poorer countries has fallen by 6% in real terms. And this is just at a time when we need increasing support more than ever, particularly because the Millennium Development Goals, our goal is to fulfill those by the end of 2015. And while much has been done to achieve those goals, there's a lot remaining. And so now more than ever, we need official development assistance, particularly for the poorest countries that don't have enough domestic financing to finance their needs. In addition, the growing needs of financing sustainable development and financing other global issues such as climate change have put additional pressure on on the need for official development assistance. So on a country basis, that's a political decision within the countries as to where money needs to go and how to prioritize different aspects of development. The post-2015 development agenda first looks at how can we agree as an international community on what goals are really important on a global basis. Second, the international community needs to provide an enabling environment, is the term we use, which means that they need to provide a world that allows countries to be able to implement policies and room to grow.
Since the Monterey Consensus in 2002, countries couldn't fulfill their commitments. What is the risk of shifting the responsibility of financing development to the private sector?
Right. That's a great question. So it's clear that the official sector is not going to have enough money to finance this on its own. We have to think clearly about what is the role of the private sector. The private sector is profit-oriented. Now, there are pockets of socially responsible investing, and those are growing, and that's very important. So those are investors who think not only about profit, but about other social needs as well. But most of the private sector is still profit-oriented and probably will remain so. And so if we're going to think about how do we incorporate the private sector into the development agenda and how do we incentivize the private sector to invest in global needs, we need to think of partnerships. And so now the part of this process and part of the post-2015 process of developing an agenda is to think about what do we need to do to incentivize the private sector. And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about in the Financing for Development Office, specifically looking at incentives of the private sector to better understand how we can come up with structures where the private sector can participate on a fair and equal basis, where risk sharing is done on a fair way.
How does financing for sustainable development differ from financing for regular development?
Great. That's an important question as well. From the process side, the financing for climate change in particular has developed on a separate track from the financing for development track. And so there are discussions underway and thinking underway as to how can we merge these two tracks. But from a conceptual basis, I would say that there's no difference whatsoever between financing for development and financing for sustainable development. In fact, nobody who would argue for development that's not sustainable. Today, we all want development that's sustainable in the long term. And sustainability doesn't just mean environmental sustainability. There are 3 pillars to sustainable development, including environmental, but also economic and social. And when we think about sustainability, we have to think about financial sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. And we have to think of financing these in an integrated manner.
Thank you, Ms. Spiegel, for this interview for DESA News.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it very much.